Welcome back to the Fried Egg Golf Podcast. I'm Garrett Morrison, and today we're speaking with the golf architect, Trevor Dormer. Trev has shaped features for golf architects like Bill Coore, Gil Hance, and Rod Whitman, and right now he's working on his first U.S. solo project, a redesign of Old Dane Golf Club in northern Nebraska. Now, the big recent development in Trev's career is that he has joined KingCollins Golf Course Design as a partner. This is the firm founded by Tad King and Rob Collins. It's behind courses like Sweetens Cove, Landman, and the new reversible Crossroads layout at Palmetto Bluff. We've had Rob Collins on the podcast a number of times. Certainly we consider his firm to be one of the most interesting and dynamic in the business. And the fact that it's now known as KingCollins Dormer qualifies as major news in the world of golf course design. So what better time to bring Trev on the podcast to talk about his new partnership and to get a sense of his approach to golf architecture. So we're going to get into that in a minute, but first, a word from our sponsor, Club Champion. Club Champion helps golfers of any skill level play better golf through custom-fitted and custom-built equipment. They have extensively trained master fitters who use in-depth, data-driven, tour-level fitting processes to get you into the golf clubs that you need. Every Club Champion location has 65,000 hittable head and shaft combinations, including all of the new 2024 brands. They have 120 plus studios nationwide, and they use industry-leading technology like TrackMan to record your data in real time. Club Champion's fittings produce real results for every level of player, including 20 extra yards off the tee on average. They also have a perfect fit guarantee. If your Club Champion custom-built clubs don't deliver what you see in the hitting bay, you can go back within 90 days and get them adjusted so that they perform how you expect them to. So for Fried Egg listeners, this is the deal that Club Champion is offering. Right now, you can use the code FRIEDEGG to get a $100 full bag fitting with a club purchase, or $50 off any other fitting type, again, with a club purchase. So go to clubchampion.com and book your fitting today. Again, that's code FRIEDEGG, all one word. All right, let's get to my interview with Trevor Dormer. Trevor, first of all, I've seen you refer to yourself as Trev from time to time. Is it Trev or is it Trevor?
It's whatever anybody wants to call me. Trev's quick and easy and short, so I always just say Trev, or I introduce myself as Trev. But yeah, it's all good. It's no biggie.
So you take a laid back approach to it. Well, in that sense, Trev would be the appropriate one because that's maybe the most laid back way to say Trevor.
That's it. Yeah.
Why don't we start with the big news here, and that's that you've joined KingCollins Golf Course Design, or should I say the firm formerly known as KingCollins, now known as KingCollins Dormer. How did this partnership come about?
Yeah, it's kind of been in the works for, about a year. Rob and Tad have been getting pretty busy over the long term. And, I thought about it for, a good 6 months because obviously, Rob and Tad are my friends first and foremost. I've been friends with Rob since 2007, before Sweetens Cove, before I ended up working with with Bill and Ben, and all when we were in our infancy in our careers, and we've always just kind of been friends. And so I was nervous when they asked me if I wanted to become a partner. And I just said, I value our friendships first and foremost, because once you get into business with your friends, it can, I had to think about that because it's not worth losing friends over business. But then, I really thought about it, and we all have such easygoing, laid back and styles that we're more conscious about how we are as, how we interact with each other than, and I know their hearts and, we're always, it's so I thought about it for quite a while, and we all just thought thought about it for quite a while just to make sure that it was going to be good. And so it's going to be a big transition process because I'm still with Bill and Ben, and I have this project here in Nebraska, the Old Dane, and they're my priority. I've said that to Rob and Tad, before we decided to kind of get together with KingCollins Dormer, that I got to make sure that Bill and Ben are priority focus, and the project that I'm helping them with in the Bahamas, Torch Key, is the needs are being taken care of. And then also it kind of ran into, timelines don't always work out, but it ran into, my own solo project here at the Old Dane. So, Bill and Ben are so gracious, and they know that we're all trying to get out on our own. And when we have opportunities, that we need to take them. So, right now it's, I've got a little bit of time to where I can help with, start the dirt move here in Nebraska. And then, we still got a really good team in Torch Key. They're the same guys from St. Lucia. So we have full confidence in those guys to where I can, get away to take care of some of this stuff here. So, that's kind of a long-winded version, but, Rob, Tad, and I have always been good friends. I've been huge fans of theirs, everything they've been doing, and I've helped them out on certain projects when I could get out and see them, and they're just so fun to work with, and so they let everybody just kind of go and do their thing and give them something. They don't put any parameters on you, so it's just a really good fit there. And so that's kind of how it started. And now things are getting busy, and they're getting a lot of inquiries about new projects and stuff like that, just like it always has been. But we just felt it was probably a good time to, without doing side notes to these clients. Oh, by the way, we have another partner coming on. We just thought we got to kind of make this public. But it's going to be a long transition before I'm totally, on with them as, and right now I'm helping them with, pre-planning stuff and just things that I'm able to kind of help with, and they're involving me with, all of that side. So,
right.
But yeah, it's good.
So, I mean, one reason for the length of the transition is that, as you've mentioned, you're very busy. You're working on your solo project at Old Dane in Nebraska, which we'll talk about in a minute, as well as some projects with Coore Crenshaw, with whom you've worked for quite a while. You mentioned Cabot St. Lucia. That was a project that wrapped up, I believe, last year or 2 years ago. The course is open now, Point Hardy Golf Club. And that's out in the Caribbean. And now Coore Crenshaw also have one going in the Bahamas at Torch Key. And so is your plan to continue working with Coore Crenshaw for the foreseeable future on projects like this? Or after Torch Key, is that going to wind down as your focus kind of turns to KingCollins Dormer?
Yeah, I think it's gonna wind down as my focus. If Bill and Ben ever need me to jump in and help out on anything, I've already let Tad and Rob know that I might have to break away if those guys need something for a short time or
go
or
shape
whatever,
a green
right?
or something. Yeah,
it's pretty special if those guys need help and I can have some time. It's just been an absolute dream to work for Bill and Ben for the past 10 years of my career. They've shaped a lot of my philosophy and let me grow in my career. And I owe everything pretty much to this date to them about, where my path has been and gone. So, it was a tough one, right? But, it's, the thing that allows you, the thing that moving on with Rob and Tad are, I get a little bit more flexibility to be home with my family. I've spent the last majority of my career doing overseas stuff because I'm Canadian and I got a good passport. So
you've worked in Japan. You've worked all over the place. You've been one of the world travelers of the Coore Crenshaw outfit, as well as for other architects. You've been in Thailand. You've been everywhere.
Yeah. It's been the vast majority of my 20 years doing this has been like, I started honestly when I was 22 years old was when I went to Russia, and I can't even believe
For
anybody
Nicholas,
hired
right?
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't believe anybody hired me to go to, overseas and actually paid me money as a 22-year-old, kid, right? But it's just how it is. I mean, so right now, I got two young boys, they're 7 and 9, and they're just little savages. And they're becoming a little, my wife, bless her soul, she's traveled around with me, drugged those kids across continents, and been with me for this whole time. Like, she lived with me for 3 years in St. Lucia, 2 years in Thailand. She was jumping back and forth when we first had our son in Japan. I mean, she's wanting to settle down in our little town of Kimberley, and same with the boys. They need to. I always say they need to go make those friends that they're going to go to jail with out of high school. So that's kind of, life kind of creeps up on you, and that's one of the benefits of, being able to be with Rob and Tad is I'm going to be able to set some of my schedule, and I have a vested interest in the company. So obviously I want to make sure I'm pulling my own weight, but, I think moving forward with our projects, I'll have a little bit of a different role, setting up, concepts with Rob and Tad and working on all aspects of these projects, dealing with clients. And then when we actually get to break ground, I want to be there to be able to set the tone to kind of build some of the stuff and kind of work with the shapers and the construction professionals that we employ and give them a good foundation to work off of, and then be able to take off and go home and see my family. So it's going to be a lot of jumping back and forth rather than, digging my feet in and living in a place, which I just can't do that anymore. Which is fine. It's good. So I'm excited to transition some of the stuff and yeah.
What excites you about what Rob and Tad have been doing as KingCollins golf course design before you came on board?
Well, I think it's pretty well known that these guys push some limits, and that's the best part. They're just so fun to work with. And I'll tell you one thing, Rob, when we build golf courses and when we build features in the dirt, I'm constantly thinking about how a ball is going to hit a feature and roll and get to a certain section of a green. It's pretty damn tough to know exactly how that's going to go unless you're doing it all the time, right? So we try to get it right, and then obviously you sand cap it, and then it gets a little bit better. Some guys kick around basketballs and stuff like that. We've never done that. It's all kind of in our mind and visual. So it's really hard to know that stuff. And Rob and Tad on some of their projects, I've kind of been like, man, I don't know. That's above my limit of what I think is going to hold and what I think is going to actually work when it comes down to mobile grass, people playing the course. And I got to be completely honest. I mean, I was like, I don't know if this is going to work, but I did it because he was very confident, and it works. And I've seen it. I've played it. I've hit shots into it where I would not have gone past that in my own comfort level. And so there's not that many guys doing that out here right now. And, and it's sometimes that's trial and error, but you don't want to have the error. You don't want to be digging up a green, 2 years down the road. And they haven't dug up greens. They haven't done this stuff. So they're kind of pushing some of my limits, and I think it's actually making me a better constructor of golf and a better designer of golf. And it's kind of opening up different corridors in my mind for what's possible. And when I started to realize that, there's no other firm that I would want to work with other than Bill and Ben. I thought about, okay, well, when Bill and Ben decide to slow down, who am I going to go, try and scrape up a job with, and it's either myself, or somebody else. And I ran through it all in my head, and I was like, the only guys, from a personal note, is these guys are my friends, and I like them and I get along with them. But as far as architectural side of things, yeah, they actually kind of push my boundaries a little bit, which I think in turn is going to make what we do in the future way better. So,
do you have an example in mind of a feature that Rob and Tad designed and that maybe you helped to execute or put in the ground that you looked at in concept and were like, I don't know if this is going to work, but then it turned out it did work?
Well, yeah, I can say that, it's kind of controversial green out here in Nebraska, but it's the fourth green at Landman. It's a probably a 9,000 square foot green as far as mobile turf, but there's probably 2,000 puttable square feet. And the how I was building that thing is I think it was a US Open was happening, and it could have been at Wingfoot, and we were just kind of looking at some of that stuff, and it doesn't really represent anything about the Wingfoot Greens at all, but it was just how the turf gets mowed down so harshly and steeply down those faces and around and back up, and how extreme the outer limits of those greens are.
Yeah, Andy and my colleague Andy Johnson, founder of Fried Egg, Andy Johnson, wrote a piece about the unpinnable area of Wingfoot's greens. It's kind of like the distinctive feature of them, that there's a lot of area on those greens that you cannot put a pin on.
Yeah, and to be completely honest, I never really thought about that. Like, we weren't thinking about that. We were just thinking about, I always call this, when I look at greens, I call it the legs of the green, the sexiness of a green, and how the curves and contours roll over and drape over her. And it's the most beautiful part of a green to me. And so I call it the legs, the sexiness of a green. And it's what stands out mostly when we craft these greens. For me, this is my opinion. I notice that first and foremost when I walk up beside a green and I'm looking at a side profile of her, or we're off the back, and we focus so much on mishits off the sides of greens and backs and stuff like that. And when a green looks really good and really sexy from all of those angles, you know that you've got something really special. And this fourth green, I was working at it with Rob, and I could tell that it was going to be good, because I would put something in and then Rob would come back and he'd be so excited. And then we would tweak it and make it more. We would just work at it. And I probably worked at it for 2 days. And then finally we got it. And Tad came out and looked at it, and he's like, man, this is good. But, it's to me, and it proved that green, a lot of people, I don't know if they really like it or think they can hold it or whatever. It's one of the more, from what Will Anderson, the owner of Landman, says, it's one of the more controversial greens out there. And for right reason. I mean, it messes with you. But what I've really found out is that that's a really good tale of good golf architecture. And I'm not trying to be cocky or whatever, but it's absolutely true. And we played that this year. I'm a pretty shitty golfer. When I play golf, I hit 3 balls, 4 balls, 5 balls. If I don't like the shot that I hit, there could be 4 balls on the green that are mine, and my friends just know it. And I just play that way of golf. I don't keep track of score. I don't have the time to really get good at golf, because you need to be on the course all the time if you want to get the little number on that scorecard down to a certain number, right? But I do enjoy hitting certain shots, and I can hit them with a few tries. But when I did that, I hit 2 good shots, and I was on the green, and I was I could have putt for birdie. Granted, one of the shots I freaking threw off into the woods, but I dropped another one and hit a good shot too. So it works. The green works. The hole works. It's just people either can't figure it out, or they weren't good at that time when they played the hole. And, it functions. It drains well. There's no flaws to it. And at first, when I was building it with Rob, I was a little bit hesitant on it, but that's just one example.
This is so interesting. Sorry. No, that's great. That's great, because it gets at something that I'm interested in with your partnership with Rob and Tad. And that's that I see you as, and you can correct me if I'm on the wrong track here, but I see you as representing a kind of different strain in golf architecture than they do, or at least coming from a different background, right? They came up in Gary Player's organization, and their work often strikes me as very influenced by Mike Strantz and Pete Dye. And maybe these are architects you love as well, but you have worked a lot with Coore Crenshaw, which is known more for a kind of minimalist and naturalist approach. So do you think you're going to bring a different point of view to what Rob and Tad are doing, a different set of skills and preferences? Or do you see more kind of consonance and similarity between you and the two of them?
I think we're very similar, Garrett. I mean, I think, Rob worked for Gary Player for a few years, and another architect previous to that. But, I think that was just trying to get into the business, so I wouldn't necessarily say that Rob's philosophy stems from that. I think, to be honest, like when we were working together in 2007 on that Gary Player project, Rob was showing me pictures of Pinehurst, and then he was showing me all of this architecture that I had no idea about. And at that time, it was one of those projects, that one or slightly after, when we did a little bit of a Donald Ross restoration in Winnipeg, Manitoba, was when I switched. I realized that building CAD golf, it was not for me. I really enjoyed the aspect of being really precise on a bulldozer or an excavator, to where when the architect came out with his laser and took shots, he's like, oh, there we go, it's to plan. Because it showed a talent that I could hone and work on with a bulldozer or an excavator. But Rob was one of the first guys that was really showing me Mike Strands. Look at this, Trevor. Look at this. Check this out. He was really trying to do something different with that project that we did in Cranbrook, BC. And it is a little bit different stylistically than other Gary Player projects. And it has to do with Rob and Jeff Lawrence. And then also the guys that were on that crew, like Riley Johns was out there with us. And that's where we all met. So we all became really good friends on that project.
That's interesting. So just for background, that's a Gary Player project in Canada that you were all working on around the 2007 to 2008 range.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and there's a lot of guys that stem from that are still doing really good work. There's Ryan Kalinka, who worked for Keith and Riley and do stuff with them. And then Dan Philcox, he's one of Rod Whitman and Keith Cutton's main guys, and I've worked with him. So a lot of that stuff came from, that point. And we all obviously grew in our careers and got, better at what we do. But I think going back to what your original question is, I think there's, like, stylistically and philosophically, I've spent more time with Bill and Ben, and Bill has really taught me certain things that kind of are subliminal in golf architecture. It's hard for me to even explain it to you. no matter how many guys try and get into Bill's head, he'll throw a loop at you. Same thing with Ben, right? He sometimes he'll just gravitate to something, and you'll be way off. You'll be like, "Damn, I was way off there, Bill." But he can pull a little bit of that and utilize it, and then and sometimes you're bang on. Bill's like, "That's perfect. That's great." So I think one of the things that I'll be able to bring to them is just a different, background. Like Rob and I and Tad, but mainly Rob and I have chatted for the past decade and a half, at least once a month. And I would say more like every 2 weeks. Like that's how close we've been. And he even helped us out in Yokohama, Japan for, a few six weeks while I was back home and we were having our first son. So, he's been around it. But yeah, there is going to be, I'm hoping I can bring something a little bit different. I wouldn't want to say that I'm just going to bring the same thing, because then they're like, well, what the hell do we need you here for? You do the same shit as us. So,
I would imagine. I would imagine your experience shaping features for Coore and Crenshaw, especially you've worked for a number of other architects as well, not just Coore and Crenshaw, but that experience is very valuable, because if you're talking about the best in the business at finish work and at aesthetics and tying things in and the work in the ground, then is there anybody better than Coore and Crenshaw?
Yeah, I mean, Bill and Ben, again, this sounds pretty cocky, but they're the best. It's undeniable. There's just levels to it, it's, and Bill and Ben, and the way that they, give confidence to the guys that we work with. We're like a bunch of, we could be a bunch of misfits as guys, like a lot of us came from different backgrounds. We didn't all come from landscape architecture backgrounds or sitting in offices. Everybody's kind of come in for their certain reasons, and Bill has gravitated to each one of us and Ben and seen something in us. Maybe it was just some spark, and then he's kind of brought us in and helped mold us in certain ways. And then, also it's, he's given us that breadth to, create our own style and our own creativity. And he doesn't ever hold us back saying, "Oh, that was stupid, Trevor. Why'd you build that?" He always will joke about something if you get a little bit too crazy, but he won't ever wipe it out completely. He instills a lot of confidence in us, that's huge, because when you're a young architect and you're just trying to get out on your own, confidence is huge. And especially guys that don't have confidence going into it, you have to be so confident if you're going to try and stand up in front of a board membership and you're in your 30s and they're going to give you millions of dollars to do something special. They have to see something in you. And Bill has done that with, and Ben and Scotty, our business manager, they've done that with all of us. And I couldn't be more grateful to those guys for that. So, yeah.
Hey, I wanted to take a quick break here to talk about Launchbox by True Golf. True Golf is a golf technology company committed to making it easy to play, improve, and enjoy the game of golf. They are now introducing Launchbox, which is an all-new portable launch monitor and golf simulator. Launchbox seamlessly connects to your PC or iOS device and makes it easy to play golf courses and improve your game year-round. And year-round is important right now because it's getting colder in a lot of parts of the country. True Golf is offering a way here for you to kind of keep up your skills through these colder months. Launchbox by True Golf offers simple setup, instant shot registration, accurate measured data, and an easy Wi-Fi connection. It's optimized for indoor use, but can also be used on range mats outdoors. Now you can turn your swings at the range into detailed feedback, giving you meaningful insight into your game, helping you optimize your practice and focus on improvement. You can also work on course strategy with Launchbox. This setup allows you to explore some of the best courses in the world, which have been meticulously recreated with E6 Connect. Each virtual recreation is mapped, scanned, and digitized to be accurate within millimeters of its real-world counterpart. Pretty unique feature there. Launchbox by TrueGolf is engineered for accuracy and designed for ease. Learn more at truegolf.com/egg. That's TRU golf.com/EGG. Check it out. Let's talk a bit about Old Dane, what you're doing right now. In fact, you came from the construction site to talk with me, and I'm grateful for the time because obviously you're in the midst of a lot of stuff out at Old Dane. First of all, just tell me about the golf course and what you're doing there.
Well, Garrett, it's going to be the best golf course in Nebraska. It's going to be
Sand Hills.
It's going to be,
here we come.
Oh, it's going to be
Wild horse.
Yeah. You just wait. You just wait and see. Yeah, exactly. Best 12 holes on the planet. Now, you know what? The start of this was kind of interesting. It stemmed from coming, working out here at Landman for like the 10, 12 days that I was here and just meeting Will Anderson. And obviously, if you've met Will Anderson, he's such a good guy, very humble, comes from very humble farming background. And his family's just great. I couldn't have been more happy. As like said to Rob and Tad, man, you guys landed one of the best clients out there. And, I'd always had a text thing going with Will a little bit here and there. And then Will, he basically, said, hey, is there any chance that you'd want to help redo or enhance the Old Dane? And at first I was like, I only seen it barely from the parking lot once. Okay. And then I looked at it on Google Earth and photos and stuff like that.
And just for context, it's like maybe 10-minute drive away from Landman, like pretty close, right?
Yeah, correct.
One of my colleagues, Matt Ruchis, was on the crew at Landman, and he and the some of the younger guys would play out at Old Dane every once in a while. They would go out to play some golf, so it's pretty close to Landman.
Yeah, and Will, he changed that course when he was younger and built some stuff, and he built some different greens, and they just made it. And you know what? The greens are kind of cool out here. It's got like side to side across the property, it's dead flat, but they made some valleys and some swales that, when Will said, hey, do you want to look at this and see what you can do? Well, I tried to get the LiDAR data and like an aerial photo, but for some reason it couldn't connect to each other. So I just said, you know what? I'm not even going to look at the course. I'm just going to look at the LiDAR data. So I had a blank piece of paper with LiDAR lines on it. And that's kind of how I routed the course. And it had a driving range, and I was like, you know what? I don't really want to waste. I'm not a huge fan of driving ranges because mainly I never grew up sitting at the driving range. But some people, it's a necessary amenity. But for me, I'm just like, I just want to play golf. And it just stems from my style of how I want to play. So I just routed holes over top of the whole piece of land, and I was like, shit, I got 12 holes, and 12 comes back to the clubhouse, and 6 is close to the clubhouse. I mean, this is kind of good. I don't know how I did it, but it worked. And it's an outer loop and then an inner loop. So, I'm hitting all the right boxes, and I did a few other routings just to double check myself, and they weren't nearly as good. And then I just said, you know what, Will, I think that this could be good if you're, allowing me free will to do whatever we need to do on this thing. And I sent it to him, and he's like, absolutely, let's go with this. So that's kind of how it started. And Will's so good. He knew how busy I was in St. Lucia, and then starting the Torch Key project. He said, I said, Will, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to you. Is there any way we can push this back a year? And he's like, yeah, I think we can push it back a year, but our irrigation system won't go 2 years. So so you just want to try not to conflict with, different projects. And so far we're making it work, but it's never a good timing to try and take on, two projects and two roles. But yeah, it just kind of came together like that. And I used a lot of the contour that was there because I don't want to just, push dirt around for the sake of pushing dirt. I want to be conscious about the budget and utilizing the interesting features that were there. So, and Will has a architectural IQ that is very high. So he understands all of these old quirky features that I've been studying for the past 20 years that I want to, instill, not copy verbatim, but some of the hints of certain weird things like at Huntercombe and Barrack and just those places, that are interesting and people, and just to try and give a little bit of a different flavor to the golf around here. And we kind of need to, right? Like it's flat, if you try and do something a little different, I think it's going to kind of be better received. So at first, maybe people won't get some of it, but I think eventually they'll just play the game of golf and they'll start to realize it. And Will's so good about it. We've got some really good ideas on what we're going to do out here and some concepts that, aren't very prevalent in Nebraska golf that we're going to instill out here. So he's on board. He's come up with some really good ideas out there. And when I put on the plan, his name is on there, redesigned by Trevor Dormer and Will Anderson. And I wanted it to be that way because I want to collaborate with the owners of projects, and especially Will. When I knew he worked on the course when he was younger and reshifted some things around, and then he helped build Landman with those guys. I mean, he's on it. He brings a side to this project where he's thinking about the player, the guy that can hit shots, execute shots into these things that I haven't been around a lot. So he's really kind of showing me that direction as well. And we think about that with Bill and Ben, but I don't have a player standing beside me being like, oh, well, what about this, Trevor? What about this? So I think it's gonna be pretty interesting, and I hope first and foremost everybody's gonna have fun out there, and it's gonna be walking only. So Will is adamant, no matter how much people are upset about walking only, it's gonna be really good that way. So that releases a few handcuffs for me.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, you don't have to consider the cart paths. That's huge.
Yeah.
Can you give me a specific on this course of something quirky that you're building that might jump out at players when they see it?
Well, we got a big Volcano Green. I mean, that thing.
A Volcano Green is like a green that's kind of elevated up from the surrounding grade that kind of sticks up like a volcano, basically, and the green is on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how high it's going to be yet. That's a field process, but we're going to make it definitely stick out of the ground, and it's not going to be like a Mount Fuji volcano. It's going to be a landform that's definitely higher than the rest of the surrounding area, and then it'll merge and spill down into the set of tees. It'll spill down off the back. So the landform is it's going to be 100 yards wide, and the green is however much yards. Like it's going to bleed out and connect into the landscape, and we've taken a different approach already. Jeff Bradley, who works with Coore Crenshaw and has been, one of the key guys. He actually was doing some stuff at sand hills, just kind of, getting stuff ready for winter. And he was cruising through here and he's like, "Hey, I got some time. Can I come help you out?" And I'm like,
you got Jeff Bradley out there.
Jeff Bradley's out here.
One of the best bunker shapers in the world. Just dropping by your project.
Yeah, and the odd thing is he's just been on a bulldozer. He hasn't been on an excavator yet. He's he's just here to help out. He's got a good relationship with the Anderson family because Jeff did most of the bunkers at Landman, and he loves it out here. And so yeah, Jeff's out here helping us out for a little bit of time before he goes back home. And then how we're thinking about the shaping process out here is we've got greens and tees and how the holes are going to kind of fit together, but we're not taking the approach of shaping the holes as a separate hole. We're basically sweeping from the west side of the property and working our way across the whole property as if it's one massive playing ground. And we kind of have an idea where grass lines are going to be. Some grass lines have merged into a double fairway just for the sake of it, just because it doesn't make sense to mow a 10-yard wide stretch of either long grass or rough grass. So we've got that. We've got a par 3 that falls away and is partially blind with some sleepers in the front of it. Oh goodness, we've got like hole number 10 is kind of interesting. It's kind of got a higher left side of the fairway. It's a short par 4 and a skinny right side of the fairway, and you can kind of choose your own adventure. It's kind of separated by a valley that was naturally there that kind of runs through where 12 and 10 and all this stuff. So I just kind of used those valleys that I seen on that topo map, not even thinking about where greens are on the old course, and just kind of tried to fit stuff together naturally. And so, and some holes were building, some holes are kind of laying there, and we're just trying to make it, Colt always spoke about infinite variety, and that's been 2 words that have guided a lot of things. I really try and make sure that I don't repeat stuff. And all of a sudden I'll build stuff and I'll be like, damn it. You don't even notice it when you're doing it. You do 3 or 4 different things on a couple different holes and you're like, oh shit, I did it again. It's so hard because that feature looks good and you like building it, and and you want to kind of instill it, but it's got to fit and it's got to make its own place. Sometimes you can get away and do a couple things on the course. Sometimes it's one time on that whole course that makes that hole memorable. And that's what really we're working hard, is to try and really make this course memorable the first time you play it, and not, get lost. There's so many golf courses out there that you walk off the 18th hole and you're like, oh, I made a birdie on... what the hell hole is that? With the bunkers, they're all the same bunkers. Right. They're all, you can't tell the bunkers apart, so that's one of my biggest pet peeves. And that's what we're really trying to do out here, is make it so that every bunker is distinct, has its own character. I mean, Jeff Bradley and I were talking about that this morning, about a kind of a cool, area for bunkers where they can merge together on two different holes. And I said to Jeff, we have to make sure that the bunkers, the greens, and the features in like 5 years, if there's a photograph of it, people are going to be like, oh, that's Old Dane. And if we do that, we win. And if people are having fun playing it, that's the biggest thing. But if we make it distinct, unique, which we're really working hard at, we're going to win. So,
there's something kind of philosophically interesting in what you're saying. When you design a course like Old Dane on a site that is frankly pretty flat, from what I can see, this, you've kind of alluded to this in what you're saying about it. It's not like the most high potential site for a golf course in the world. people
No.
are familiar with Landman. Yes, it's nearby, but a completely different kind of landscape.
Yeah,
Couldn't be
big
more
time.
different, in fact. And like Landman is so severe that it's almost hard to have a golf course there. This is a pretty flat piece of property. And you come out of a tradition that takes inspiration from the land. And so when you're trying to build a varied, memorable golf course, and you're not really getting any help from the land, what do you do? Like, where do you get your inspiration from for how to shape things and what kinds of features to include when there's not much there in the land itself?
Well, the last thing that I want to do, Garrett, is say I want to build the 16th hole at North Berwick, or I want to do the 8th green at Sand Hills. That's the last thing I want to do. Now, there might be a little piece of the green at Sand, and I've never been out to Sand Hills, so I don't know, and I've never been to North Berwick, so I don't know. But there might be a little piece that catches my eye of a certain hole that I've seen. It's kind of I've computed all of this knowledge and photos into my head, and I won't even really know what course it is, but I'll be like, shit, I seen a course somewhere in the north of Scotland that had one thing about it that really struck me, and I'll find it and I'll be like, okay, well, maybe there's something like this. Keep it up there, Trevor. And to be honest, of the, like, we've shaped 1, 2, 3 greens already out here in the past month, and none of them are on that drawing of the Old Dane. None of them are even close. Like, they're all in the field riffing, and that's the biggest. That's basically what we do is we kind of have an idea of length, orientation of a hole, and then we riff. And we just kind of be like, well, what do we do here? And a lot of times we have spots for bunkers, but I don't think about building a bunker. I shape a lot of the stuff on the fairways and stuff like that. And then we're also thinking about, what other hazards are there? I don't want to build a sand bunker just because there needs to be a hazard there. We're thinking about multitude of different hazards that we've seen throughout our experience, and that's what we're going to try. A lot of times, abrupt contour in the fairway can mess with you just as much as a bunker, and it's easier to maintain. So we're really being conscious about that as well. So, but to be. I don't know how many more of these I got left in my career. It's tough, man. Like, you can't keep building on flat sites and try and not repeat yourself.
Yeah, that's what I would imagine, that it's really hard to come up with a zillion different ideas. I'm reminded, in fact, of a story that Bill Coore likes to tell about working at Talking Stick, building 36 holes at Talking Stick. Unbelievable pair of golf courses, considering what they started with. But at the beginning of that project, Bill was saying to Ben and Dave Axland and everybody else who was working on that project, guys, if you have any ideas for holes on flat land that you want to build, then bring them to me, because we've got to build 36 holes on nothing. We've got to come up with a bunch of different ideas. And so what you're saying, if you work on flat site after flat site, it's just really hard to keep refreshing that well of ideas because you're not really getting much from the land.
Well, I'll tell you another thing, Garrett. I've been preparing for this because I've known it's been coming for a decade or more, because I knew that when I first started getting projects, I'm not going to get the best sites. I'm going to get some shitty sites. And I knew that this was coming, and I studied Buenos Aires Golf Club, the Mackenzie course that he built out there. He had 12 feet of fall over top of the whole property, and it was the last 12 feet of fall was like in a short run. And he just started cutting swales and taking water from all different sections of that property to create that interest. And, this is probably Mackenzie being a bit of a salesman, but he said that the course does not need to be bunkered. It's beautiful the way it is, but he's only putting in a few bunkers because the owner likes it, So that really stuck out to me about a decade ago of how Mackenzie did it on a not spectacular, rumpled, rolling land. And I studied it and studied it and studied it and thought, okay, well, that's definitely the way to create interest, is to dig swales and to move. If you cut 2 feet on a flat fairway and fill 2 feet, you've got links land, small rumpled links land, which is,
it's just like moving dirt, kind of moving dirt from one place to another, and you do it a few times, and all of a sudden you got undulation.
And then you move your water off the fairway.
Yep.
Get it out of the way. It seems simple, but then you also have to be very particular in how you shape the ground. A lot of guys, especially in the 80s and 90s, they rolled down the fairway and on the sides and went up the left-hand side and down as you would play the golf hole. Well, we know what that produces, right? So I've learned from some of the best guys on bulldozers to have done this. And one thing I notice is they kind of work in diagonal fashions or sideways. Rod Whitman was the first guy that I kind of took notice to that. Rod shapes a lot of stuff sideways and kind of carves out swales sideways, and then he kind of hits it a little bit differently. And you have to work yourself in maybe not all different directions, but a different direction from the line of play. Otherwise, and that doesn't mean that you can go and move dirt and do a finish grade in the line of play if that's what you're looking for, but you got to make sure that you're keeping yourself random, because you can look at a lot of modern links courses, even some of the best courses out there, and I can tell where the guy went in there and with his bulldozer and then went 10 yards to the right and built up a little thing. And it's like all these, especially aerial photography, you can see it all throughout these supposedly random rolling terrain. And then they've made it not random. And they're some of the best courses in the world. And it's not a negative thing. It's just something that I don't want to do. I want to make sure that it's like, you're not thinking about that. So a lot of times I put music in or a podcast, and I'm focused on the podcast, and it's just subliminal. And that really helps me not to focus too much on exactly what I'm doing. And then you end up with happy mistakes that you can work off of when you actually get out to focus.
That's interesting. You like to remove your kind of internal editor when you're doing some of this stuff.
Big time. Yeah. And this is just my process. I'm not saying it's the best, or there's guys out there that are way better than me at this stuff, but I just have this process where I want to make sure that I'm not repeating and I'm doing stuff random and I'm not thinking about it. I'm not being too conscious about making, a bunker at St. George's Hill, or, and there's so much golf out there, and there's so much of everything. It's kind of hard not to replicate stuff. I want to say that there's a bunch of architects out there that profess that it's all been done before in some way, shape, or form. So you're not going to get anything new or innovative. Maybe I'm saying it differently, but even though it probably is true, I refuse to believe that, because that's how you just get stifled. And that's that person who's very well known, and these architects that are very well known with that, saying it's all been done before. You're just doing something in one way, shape, or form. Even though it's probably true, there's a lot of golf out there. I just can't allow myself to think that way, because then you get kind of stuck at that wall of thinking, oh, well, it's all been done before. Maybe I should start copying or replicating stuff. And that's the last thing I want to do. So, a lot of times I take inspiration from like mega dune sites on Google Earth. I have 2 different sites that are in random parts of the world. No golf is even close to it. And the dune systems change quite frequently from year to year to year to year to year. So I've got probably 10 years of things where I've done full routings on a dune site out in the middle of the ocean, just to keep myself fresh and to see something differently. And luckily enough, the aerial imagery of this kind of gets you down and you can see it. Like when Google Earth is really good, you can see undulation. This place is probably some of the best golf if you were to build on it, which would never happen. But that's where I start taking some inspiration from, playing holes backwards on the stuff, forward, sideways. And, so anyways.
I haven't heard about that approach before. That's interesting. You're kind of finding random non-golf places, like pieces of terrain in the world that you can look at digitally, and that provides some inspiration.
And it's helped me so many times. My last my Lido entry for whatever 2021 was that.
This is the Lido contest where people draw imaginary golf holes and one is selected the winner, or there are finalists and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I had kind of an idea of wanting to kind of do something like Albocorán in Argentina, Mackenzie's course that was never built, but
right. Crazy reverse, how many holes with how many greens, it's there's a reversible kind of element to it, or greens are played into from a variety of different directions, right?
Yeah, it was an 18-hole course with 9 double greens. I'm not sure if it was meant to be reversible or not.
It's more, but more like kind of St. Andrews, but not laid out and back, more around, right?
Yes, yeah. Correct. And it didn't, and it was for a private, a private course for an estate. And so there's zero safety. So you basically walk off the green, hit your next ball. But I kind of thought about that, and I was like, I was kind of not jaded by the fact that you can build this fantasy golf hole for the Lido whenever, and it could be the best of the best, but it never relates to how you would lay it out on an actual golf course. So I did a routing for this, a Bocaron style routing, and I picked how 4 of the holes interacted together. It was a double green. One played into it from the side as a par 3, and the other one played into it from the south to the north, and then it showed how you teed off when you crisscrossed that and went to 16 into 5. So that's and I got my inspiration from that, from a natural site that I'm not going to give up. This
is your special site. It's you can't tell anybody about it. This is
Yeah. And the biggest thing about it is it's very good imagery. So you can walk the land, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. So I go there sometimes. A lot of times it's certain things that I want to do. And that's, with Will Anderson out here, he's just given free rein. He might kind of be like, ooh, I don't know about that, Trev, but let's try it out. Or he might find a crazier idea than me. I'll be like, oh shit, Will, but that's what's so good. And I never would have done this project if it wasn't for the Anderson family. The client was the first and foremost reason why I did it, because if it was another client that couldn't let me just breathe and just feel at home on this property and with the team, it wouldn't be successful, because that's the last thing when you're trying to really focus on bringing a client the best property or the best golf course that you possibly can, and then there's peripheral stuff that you got to deal with. It just doesn't work out well. And so far out here, it's been really good. We got some of the farm boys from the Anderson farms that are helping us out.
Oh, cool.
We got Corey and Matt and Steve, the superintendent. He was on a bulldozer, working with us, and all these guys, and Tom, and it's just so great, and then we got a really good irrigation contractor, EVI Irrigation. They're doing they've just done such a great work with the wet well so far. So we've lined up all of these, good people to work with. And so far it's really getting, it's really being cohesive. Now, next year, when we're into the thick of it, there might be a few clashes, but we always get through that.
Well, you've worked with some great architects, obviously. Do you ever find yourself, now that you're the boss on a site, kind of stealing tricks from Bill Coore or Gil Hance or Rod Whitman in the way that you're interacting with your crew? Do you ever think about how those architects kind of direct their crew, work with their crew, and try to apply some of that to how you're acting on site?
Well, yeah, I've been on the receiving end and friends with shapers that, have, criticisms of how architects work with them. So I'm very conscious about that now that I'm in this role. So
what's the worst thing a golf architect can do to a shaper?
Well, us shapers are creative. We have big egos sometimes. If you don't smash it out. So we have these egos. So, what Bill and Dave Axlin and Ben have always preached for the past 10 years is don't get married to that. And you get married to it. Why would I build something and present it to somebody like Bill if it wasn't my best flipping work? Right. I wouldn't. So now your best work comes up to the chopping block, and let's just say, if Bill likes, half of it, I'm like, yeah, okay, that's good. If he likes none of it, you just sink, Yeah,
and it's natural. That's what happens.
Yeah, and it's a lot of pressure when one of the best golf course architects is like, yeah, I think we need to go a different route. Well, what do you like of it? Well, nothing. So you have to have, and then you just realize you're working with these guys, and it's so free flowing, and we jump in and out of, and that's one thing is we moving forward. I don't really consider myself the boss. I just, I help direct people, and if I'm very adamant about doing something because I see a mistake about to happen, then I'll interject. But I really am. Bill has taught us to be like, just do what you guys do best. You're the professionals, and I'll just kind of come in and, guide and direct just like a shepherd, like that's what Bill is. He's a very, he's a good shepherd of how to keep people. He doesn't really force people or get people into the lane. We don't have lanes. We just have, highways that we kind of need to stay on. And, so I've really learned over the years how to be, well, it's always a work in process on trying to be humble as you can. But try to be humble in what you're trying to do, and to recognize that the people that are doing stuff, if you don't portray your idea properly, they're not going to get it right. And then how do you say to that person who spent time doing a good job, how do you say, that's probably not right? And I always put it on me, like saying, hey guys, I have no idea what I'm doing here, but let's just try and get something so we can work off of. And that is my process. That's a lot of our processes is we're field-based architects. We don't conform to preconceived notions, even when we've walked the site for that much. There's only a few special sites where you have these preconceived notions, and that involves sandhills. It's where you do not want to mess up anything, and you've routed something special over it. That's when you have preconceived notions of what this, and even that, it's minor adjustments to make it playable for golf.
So Trev, you're kind of, I don't know if you see yourself this way, but you're part of a current wave right now of golf architects who have spent years shaping for some of the top names in the business, still the top names in the business. But these former shapers, now kind of solo architects, are now getting their shots at projects. And so I'd include you alongside people like Kyle Franz and Brian Schneider and Blake Conant and Jimmy Craig and Kai Golby and Riley Johns and Keith Rebb. There's sort of this cohort that is now, since the golf course development industry is in a surge right now getting their shots. And I've been really interested to see the work coming out of this new wave. And I'm wondering if you think that this kind of rising generation of architects should try to distinguish themselves from Coore and Crenshaw and from Tom Doak, from Gil Hance. Should they be intentionally trying to do something different, fresh, and new? Or should it be more of a continuation?
Well, you know what? I don't really. I mean, thank you for including me in some of that. I have no idea how the hell that happened, or even if it's true. I don't really consider myself.
You're building basically your own golf course right now. You're totally rebuilding a 9-hole golf course, turning it into a 12-hole golf course. A lot of young architects out there would really like to build a 12-hole golf course.
Yeah, that's true. I do feel blessed to be in this position, and but you know, those are some big names, and I've looked up to those guys for a long time and seen a lot of their work, and I'm just like always blown away about how good those guys are. And it's hard for me to be even considered in that conversation, but I'll get off of that. I don't. You know, I walked around with Mr. Kaiser and Mike Kaiser for 3 days, which was pretty special in St. Lucia, and chatted with him about this. And I said, hey, you know what? He's like, so what are you going to do? Are you going to get out on your own at some point? I'm like, I'm just happy where I'm at. And this is great being able to work with Bill and Ben. And I'm like, and I asked him, I said, well, what do us guys do? We've taken all of this knowledge that we've gained from Bill and Ben, and I don't want to do the same stuff that Bill and Ben do. I mean, that's them. You know, we're helping build their designs, and we're assisting them, and they're gracious enough to give us some free reign on some stuff, but they're really, it's always their designs. None of it is really our design. But I don't necessarily it would be highly flattering if in 10 years, you know, we're doing as good of work as Coore and Crenshaw, but I want to do something different. Just personally, stuff that I've thought about in my head, an expression of me and you know, my new partners, Rob and Tad, to be something that's an expression of us, not necessarily what Bill and Ben would have. And I would hope the same goes for other guys. I think we need to do that in order to advance golf architecture. You know, there's so many different stages and eras of golf architecture. And, you know, I never really thought about it, but I think you're right. You know, I think, as you know, some of these guys that are in their 40s and 30s and 50s are coming out of these certain different schools. I would just hope that they do something different so that we can advance things. We don't, and not for the worse. I think it's like we've seen a dark era of golf architecture, and we've seen the golden era of golf architecture. So we have two different eras to learn from. And I think that the dark era should be studied just as much as the golden age of golf architecture. And then the little bits in between, just to make sure that we're not going back. And I think we can. Can you imagine if you know, the Sandhills of Nebraska gets 5 more golf courses? That's not going to necessarily be, unless somebody does something different on every piece of that ground. You're going to play all 5 of those courses and you'll be like, okay, well, I'm playing the same, but I just want to play Sandhills because it's the best. Right. You know, if you're in that zone and you're building good golf course, lay of the land, and you do, you know, it's going to be the same feel and style, even though it's amazing. But I think we need to kind of differentiate ourselves and kind of do do something different than, what Tom and Gil and Jim and Bill and Ben and those guys have done. I think it would be disservice to them if we didn't do something that's expressively ours.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you may not have an answer to this question. I think it's an unanswerable question, but I've been wondering where that difference is going to come from, because in terms of process, it seems like you especially, as well as other architects from your general generation that I've spoken to, you're devoted to the design build method and working in the field. And that's something profound that you all have learned from Bill and Ben and Tom and Gil. And you've learned how to do that really well. The design build method has been burnished to a shine by this era of golf architecture. And it seems like everybody's carrying that on and believes in kind of the religion of working in the field. But the difference has to come from something else then, I guess, because the process is going to be similar. You're not going to go back to design contract and, designing from an office. It doesn't sound like. But how then do you differentiate your architecture from the past generation? Is it by introducing more bits of artificiality, not blending everything in? Is there something there? Is it by looking at different influences, different sources of inspiration than perhaps Bill and Ben and Tom and Gil would have? And I'm talking about these architects in the past tense. They're still working. They're still doing amazing work out there. But do you have some way of starting to answer that question of where the difference in the new architecture is going to come from?
Do you know where this is going to change and where we're going to be? And this is kind of a little bit off, but where we're going to get really screwed is AI. It's going to change what we do. And I don't know how much time we got, but think about this. The most complex part of golf architecture is the routing. There's very few people that are good at it. You can go and look at any city in America and look at a plan view of it, and you can pick out flaws in the routing easily, whether they've shaped holes parallel to each other like this, and then at the end they've changed it and come back. Right. That's a massive flaw. And a lot of those golf architects, either were just recently practicing or still are practicing, and that's really bad.
Yeah.
But if you get AI and compress that into build me a routing of well, there you go.
Build me 1,000 routings.
Build me 1,000 routings with the clubhouse here, here, and here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to change where the pump station, I'm going to change where the lake is. Boom, computes. And then this sounds horrible, but then any young guy that has this computer skills can just talk, and you have to have, knowledge, can upload that and talk to a contractor. All these contractors will, if the ownership might even just do it. I want to build a golf course. I'm going to get this contractor to plug my AI routing into their GPS system.
Yep.
The bulldozer guys get it to within it's freaking close, and that's what scared the shit out of me.
Maybe not even the bulldozer guys. Maybe the bulldozer robots. Right.
Well, that's right. But that's what scared the shit out of me at Lido. And from what I understand, it's still happening now. Whether or not this is a sci-fi reality of something that's going to happen in the future, I don't know. I still think that there's going to be a space for the craftsmen that like us that are there to put. I don't think we'll get left out because there's something that robots and AI won't be able to do. I'm a firm believer in that. Our brains are far more complex than AI, and our creativity and the human beings are far superior to whatever AI can produce.
Right.
But as far as getting it started, there's going to be guys out there that figure that out, which are far smarter than I am at computers and drawings. They'll plug it into a computer, get a Bill Coore routing, a Bill Coore Tom Doak breed of a routing, and then they'll get it. Then they'll paint it with the best bunker placement for the demographic of golfer that is going to play that course, and then they'll highlight it. And then you get an agronomist in there, and he'll tune the turf up better than Shinnecock. And there we go. You got one of the best golf courses in the world. And, who's rating it? Well, that's a different subject. But
maybe it'll be ChatGPT rating it. It won't be me anymore. Right? I'm not going to be writing it.
We're laughing about this, and we're taking this into the future. But I think there's got to be given some space for AI and the routing process on a topographical map for just fluidity. And it's going to, there's so many things that are so complex when it comes to routing. You want to think about wear paths. You want to think about cart paths. You want to think about times, tee times, and how they're going to move. Is there a slowdown effect in that routing? Maybe not a jam, but is there a slowdown? How can you mitigate that? All of these factors are going to get into something to where it's a seamless, free-flowing course that is highly profitable. Because golf courses don't make a shit ton of money nowadays, even the best ones. It's profit at the end of the year isn't amazing, isn't millions and millions of dollars. It takes a lot, and it's a passion kind of project for these owners. Some of them really do, depending on if you're in the Hamptons and you got really rich, private clubs, but public golf courses don't do nearly as well.
Right.
So
regarding the AI thing that you're mentioning, right? This is in your response to my question about where is the difference in the new generation going to come from? And so is the difference that new architects are going to find ways of working with AI to produce new kinds of things? Or are the best new architects going to be the holdouts against the AI wave? The architects who insist on the kind of human approach to architecture? Because I've been thinking about this myself from my perspective as a writer and a podcaster, because there are products right now, AI-driven products, that can replace a lot of the functions that I am responsible for. It can write things much faster than I do. It can it can learn my voice and probably produce podcasts where, it's there's someone who sounds a lot like me interviewing someone who sounds a lot like you, and maybe it'll get to a point where people can't really tell the difference. And so my conflict has been, do I work with our new robot overlords and try to become optimized as a human that way? Or do I say, no, I am going to be human and flawed, and I am going to make that the thing that is different about me, because everybody else is going to give in to the AI. I'm going to hold out, and there are going to be people who still want that.
I'm holding out, Garrett. That's just not fun, man. Building golf courses, what we do. And that's another thing that the best golf courses that are built are because the team that built it had fun. You can tell they had fun. If you're following the build, you can tell they're having a good time. They're ripping back and forth at each other on social media nowadays. But if we didn't have social media, you could, call each other up and whatever. But that's the fun part of it, is the interaction between humans building it and the collaboration part of building a golf course. Collaborating with everybody building a golf course. Sure, you can be an AI dweeb sitting in his basement building these best golf course routings, and then build it and get all this acclaim for building one of the best golf course. But did he have fun? No, he let somebody else do it. So, or she let somebody else do it. Let AI do it. So you're just going to be, and unless they hide it, but I don't think you can, so just, I'm holding out. I'm going to do this until I'm old and gray or crippled. But, it's just so fun. I really, in the past 20 years, there's been maybe a few times in my whole life, even on the shittiest rain days or snow days, where I've woken up in the morning and been like, damn, I don't want to go out there today. Generally, and I'm being very honest, I wake up every morning, and whether it's bright, sunny, 30 degrees or 90 degrees, and I'm like, frick, I can't wait to get out there. So that to me is a dream. And then people that I've done jobs where I've just been like, oh, I got to go and do this. And I can't, I physically can't. But building golf courses, designing golf courses, there's so many different facets to it. So many different things you can do within a day or within a year or months that just makes so much variety and fun and different things. It's amazing. I love it. I love it to death. It's a passion. And you know what? I've never ever would have thought of myself being in this industry. I used to fly fish and snowboard and skateboard. I didn't want to do golf. Golf was just something that my dad and his buddies did on weekends. And, before I started this, I wanted to be a war correspondent, and so the only reason I'm doing what I'm doing right now is because I had to pay for school. Because, I didn't grow up in a very wealthy household. And my first job was working construction on a golf course and just realizing, hey, these shaper guys travel the world without getting shot at. Maybe that's a way to go.
It's a good ticket. Yeah.
Well, yeah, my mom liked it.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sure she was, yes, golf course construction. If you're going to go to Russia, at least be on a golf course.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. It's been a ride, man. It's been great. It's been so fun.
Are there any ongoing or upcoming KingCollins Dormer projects that we should be aware of? I know you've got a lot on your plate right now, but are there some plans coming together for the next few years, things that we should look forward to with this new super group that you all have?
Yeah, there are. There's some we can't talk about, but the one that's really exciting is 7 Mile North. Mm-hmm. That thing is going to be unbelievable. So I was very excited.
This is out in Tasmania, working with Correct. Matt Goggin out there and his group, a little spit of land not far from the Hobart International Airport, where Mike Clayton and Mike DeVries have been building the first golf course. KingCollins Dormer is doing the second one. Sandy land right next to the ocean. Pretty cool. Very
sandy. And what's cool about it is it's very different than Clayton, DeVries, and Ponce's site. It's got some really cool, longer rolling terrain, which, I can imagine, the artistry that Mike and those guys had to do out there, especially when you get a lot of choppy dunes. There's a lot of manipulation you still have to do to make golf holes work. And they did a fantastic job from the photos that I've seen and what Rob and Tad have told me and shown me about. So yeah, that one I'm very excited. I mean, they can't speak highly enough about Matt Goggin. So that's one of the things that you have to get right is your client and your owner and make sure he's on board with everything that you want to do. And then, Rob and Tad are still working on their Bounty Club course, which I'm not necessarily a part of at all. So that was done previous. And I'm doing the Old Dane, which is previous to it, our partnership. And then, the 21 Club in South Carolina there. I mean, that thing's going to be pretty cool too. So we're just kind of, we're all really excited to get going on that. And it's all just about timing, right? There's a lot of stuff coming in and we just are making sure that we're available and that we can put all of our best foot forward and we can all be available on all these sites, together or separately at one time or another to where, we're getting the best out of the site and ourselves. So, but yeah, there's some big ones coming up. I'll tell you that, some really big ones. And it's pretty exciting, but we've pushed some of them back, just to make sure that we can finish things and that I can get finished with what I'm doing out here and that, and then we can make sure that we give it the attention that we need. So, but it's exciting, man.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on the pod, Trev, and good luck with everything you're working on.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it, Garrett, and I hope I didn't ramble too much for this thing.
Not at all.
Tend to get excited on some of this stuff. So
rambling is the brand here. Rambling is the goal.
The rambled egg. The scrambled egg.
That's quite good. The rambled egg. Okay.
No S.
Yeah.
Or C.
Let's leave it there. Thanks, Trev.
Cool, man. Thanks. Appreciate it.
This episode of the Fried Egg Golf Podcast was produced by PJ Clark. Thank you, PJ. If you enjoyed this kind of deep dive into golf architecture, I can just about guarantee that you would like what we're doing in Club TFE. A lot of our exclusive content in Club TFE has to do with golf courses and golf course design. We have weekly course profiles, which are in-depth analyses of what we consider to be very interesting or great golf courses. And we also have a weekly feature called Design Notebook, which basically keeps you up to date on everything going on in the world of golf architecture. Certainly in this upcoming Design Notebook, we'll be talking about Trevor Dormer and his work with Tad King and Rob Collins. So again, Club TFE, thefriedegg.com/membership. That's where you can find out what else we're offering within Club TFE. It's not just content. So I think that you should check that out. And if you do, thank you so much. Thank you also for listening to this episode, and we'll be back again soon with another.